So good morning. How are you? How are you doing? Where are you based again?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay, so what's the weather like? Is it a good Friday morning for you there?
Fortunately, it's a little gloomy today, but generally speaking, the weather has been getting better, so no complaint.
Right, right on. Well, let's jump right into it. Thank you very much for agreeing to sit with me today and have this wonderful meeting. This is for our Cannabis and Coffee Conversations podcast. We're going to be relaunching that in a matter of weeks, kind of in support for the marketing for the Legacy Project documentary that we're together as well. Which we'll get to shortly. I did see the seat at the table event. I will get to that shortly. But let's start with your journey to cannabis. From our last conversation, you started as an immigration lawyer, and way somehow your journey led you to cannabis, and even more so compelled to get involved in the cannabis conversation. Let's start with that. That you formed the National Association of Black Cannabis Lawyers. So please tell me about your journey.
Absolutely. So I like to say I took a very crooked path to get to where I am today. It was not anticipated. And probably if you had met me 4 years ago, I would be singing a completely different song. I didn't know very much about cannabis 4 years ago. However, as you pointed out, I was an immigration attorney, and although this wasn't the focus of my practice, it was not unusual to see people who had come into detention centers and got involved with deportation proceedings as a result of nonviolent, low-level cannabis possession or cannabis-related charges. As I said, it's fairly commonplace. I won't say it's everyone, but it is one way that people get into the system, so to speak.
Right,
And at the time that I got into cannabis, I was really looking to leave immigration. There were a lot of things going on in the United States that made immigration a place that I did not want to be. I just didn't want to come home with the weight of babies in cages, let's just say. So, and so I decided, I wanted to take a look at what was next. And by fortunate happenstance, I attended an event that was actually put on by Black Enterprises magazine here in Charlotte. And I completely pushed myself out of my comfort zone. I attended the event. It had absolutely nothing to do with cannabis. But on one of the panels that I sat in, there was one lone cannabis attorney. And I thought, this is very strange. I've been an attorney for 20 years and I've never heard of a cannabis
right.
attorney. I
It
wonder what this
exists.
thing
Right.
is. Who knew that cannabis was even legal? I'm like, is this a criminal attorney? Long story short, it piqued my curiosity enough that I started looking into it. I still found it a bit strange because, to my knowledge, cannabis was something that landed you in jail. It certainly wasn't something that required you to have a business attorney. Another set of circumstances took me to Seattle, Washington, which is where I ran into that same attorney again, and there my eyes were opened. It was the very first time I'd ever been in a place where cannabis was legal. It was legal recreationally. There were dispensaries on every corner, more dispensaries than Starbucks, I like to say. And I say that because Seattle is the birthplace of Starbucks.
Right, right
And
on.
so, as you can imagine, there are a lot of Starbucks there. The fact that there are more dispensaries there than there are Starbucks is a startling fact. Fast forward that, because I'm such a curious person, I'm an education based person. I really wanted to uncover how was it possible that I lived in a country where we were both incarcerating and deporting people, and we were also having access to medicine and access to generational wealth, quite honestly, when you hear about all of the money that was being made at the time in cannabis. That bothered me. It did not sit right with me at all. As I looked at the map of, who's who and what's what, I saw a pattern. And that pattern was where there were Black and brown people in abundance, there was a lot less openness for the idea of dispensaries and legalized
Yeah,
cannabis. And where we were a little bit more sparse, there was this whole new industry being built.
right.
Again, that did not set right with me. And the rest is history. I took that sort of curiosity that turned into anger, quite honestly.
Right.
Anger
I
that,
hear you.
in this day and age, there was this type of disparity going on. Anger that there were people languishing in prisons and people whose families were separated permanently. And at the same time, discovering that I'd been lied to all along, right? And when
Right.
you peel back the onion and you look at the history of prohibition in this country, you realize that a lot of the things that people in my generation grew up on are not even true. And the people who set those wheels into motion did so knowing that the information wasn't true.
Right. Right, right on. And well, that's a interesting I guess question. I myself want to know one on a similar journey, not really realizing the full fundamental elements of the war on drugs and how it was literally intricately woven into systems to really to attack black and brown people. I mean it's literally almost written in the books. I was in fact for the documentary I want to pull up a graphic. I want to show or even just the stats with what when we talk about that Caucasians consume at the same rates. I want to put the numbers to people. If Caucasians were arrested at the same rates, we'd be talking tens, hundreds of thousands of no, millions of arrests. And then there would be you see a huge upswell. Of course we have to decriminalize this. This is not even a bad it's not even a bad drug for I mean technically we are now the truth is now coming out. And it's the disparity. There's a level of unknowingness of what the war on drugs really did to people. The last time we spoke, that you and what you kind of mentioned it a little bit before that. As far as you're concerned, cannabis or ganja, that's just a criminal activity, and you can even understand why people are trying to make create an industry out of it. How was that progression for you as well, or transition?
Oh, well, I am open to learning, right? So that means I'm still useful on this planet. So
All right.
that's kind of my marker. When you think you know it all, that means your usefulness here is over, right? So I am still open to learning things. And I was very much of the don't just say no era, right? That's how I grew up and it's what I believed. And it's quite honestly what I instilled in my own children. And it's not that that has changed, right? I still don't believe in pouring toxins into your body for sport. I think we have to make decisions with a consciousness level, but at the same time, we're a land of freedoms, and we are free to make certain types of choices. Right? If I come home from work and it's been a long day, and I want to have some Merlot or some Chardonnay, there's no one there knocking on my door telling me not to. That's
Right.
an adult choice that I get to make. And so my view on it just being an illegal drug changed. I realized that, American history is riddled with things that were once illegal, that had to be fought and won for us to have the right? It was once illegal for me to vote. It was once illegal for me to read. It was
Right.
once
Really.
illegal for me to marry who I wanted to marry. And so we can't just rest on legality. Legality is important for a society to function. You have to have rules and laws,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that those laws and rules cannot be challenged, especially when they are wrong. And in this instance, we're talking about something that is, in fact, very, very wrong. You talked about the interwoven systems. There is something deliberate about the way the war on drugs rolled out. There is something intentional about the dismantling of the families that were dismantled. When you think about how marijuana, cannabis, ganja in particular, is treated in different communities, there are some people who are afforded the pass of childhood indiscretion. They're just kids. We all did it. And there are other communities where people are then targeted and thrown away, quite frankly, as being useless and not able to contribute to society. And how we can look through the lens and see these things so very different based upon the amount of pigment in someone's skin is a crime in and of itself.
I couldn't agree more. That's a very, very, very good point. I'll definitely be using that. Thank you. I'm going to quote that in the magazine as well. Thank you. Well, tell me, because you said that when you started, the first one that you went to, there was one cannabis lawyer. You're surprised to see that. How has the response been with the lawyers for with the Black Cannabis Association? 'Cause I can imagine something told me that that person might have been Caucasian. So I'm just curious. Potentially, I don't know. It was at the Essence meeting. I don't know. But how is how has it been? I guess bringing more Black lawyers into the cannabis space to help with what we're doing.
So that's been an interesting journey. And I can say now that I probably bit off more than I was ready to chew
Yeah.
when I embarked on this journey, but it doesn't change the fact that I think it's extremely important. Part of the reason that this was started was because I very quickly understood the landscape of, okay, I see what's happening here. But one thing that I heard consistently, and you have to bear in mind that I live in North Carolina, but I'm from New Jersey. And when I came to this awakening, it was at the time where New Jersey was looking to legalize adult use. And so I was very fortunate that as a member of the New Jersey State Bar, I was able to be on the bar, had a special committee on cannabis, right? And that committee did a lot of work to help roll out the foundation of what the legal landscape looks like. A lot of things came in our direction to review. ponder, to add our own commentary to. And I knew nothing, right? So I was probably mostly in the space of a learner at that point. But I had such wonderful support in that learning journey. I think something that would have been overwhelming is if I had attempted to learn these things on my own, because at the time there was so much information online and it was very hard to discern what was valid, what
And
was
you're
invalid,
absolutely
what
right.
was
You still
folklore,
get
what
that.
was
You still
true. Yeah, I mean, that still exists, but I think there are more resources now. At least I know where to find those resources. Whereas before, I was completely clueless. If I had not had that sort of guide, and mind you, that guide was other people who were learning too, right? We didn't have anything solid, but I felt a sense of comfort because lawyers are trained to look at primary sources. We don't go to TikTok for our information. We go to actual law books for our information. We go to cases, we cite credible sources. And so this was very different because there were no credible sources to cite. And so I had a bit of handholding, or at least a peer learning that took place that gave me a level of comfort. And I thought, you know what? Other lawyers who don't have access to this, if you live in a state that doesn't have that special committee, where do you learn? Where do you get your information? At the same time, there was so much talk about social equity and a lack of diversity. The industry is still very heavily dominated by white males. And there's nothing inherently wrong with being white male and being in the industry, but there is when you look at the fact that the jails are full of black males who utilize the same plant to try to advance the wealth and well-being of their own families in some instances, or take care of their own mental health because they weren't getting those services, or PTSD, or you name it. A lot of people self-medicate with something such as cannabis. And so as we talked about a lack of diversity, I looked around the rooms that I was sitting in and I thought, well, of course, there's no diversity in the industry. There's no diversity amongst the leadership. How
Right.
do we think we're going to attain this diversity of industry when we don't even bother to try to make sure that the regulators are a diverse pool of people, let alone an educated pool of people that know something about cannabis, that know something about the history of prohibition, that understand the war on drugs and its impact? The fact that some people view this solely for its financial potential is scary because when you look at this just from the perspective of finance, you don't care about the people. You don't care about the people who came before you and laid the foundation. You certainly don't care about the people who might be harmed by the product you put out there. As long as those margins stay low enough that your profit is able to increase, then you it's a win-win. And so that's frightened me enough that I started calling upon my colleagues. I attended Howard University School of Law, and that was the first place I started. I looked for my fellow classmates. I started asking questions. I used to be an immigration attorney after all. So I started with the immigration organizations and asked who's dealing with this? What are we doing about this? Now that we're legalizing, who's standing up and saying, hey, we've got these immigrants that are not only deported, a lot of them can't even reapply to come back into the country. Who's standing up for those voices? And the response was staggeringly silent. There weren't any groups dealing with this. I could not find more than two black attorneys in a city dealing with this. And I was shocked. I was absolutely stunned that this wasn't already full-fledged. Somebody wasn't already leading this charge.
Let's backtrack a little bit because I don't think, especially when you're speaking to the American public, especially given the political climate, and when you speak of deportation, people think that you're talking about these immigrants who are at the border trying to get in, these criminals or whatever who are trying to get in, and they break in, and then you find them and you catch them and you jail them, cage them, and then send them back
Mhm.
to where they came from. But it's a significantly much more than that. I mean, I'm sure many of the people that you dealt with are people who had established families. They might have come to the country when they were 3, 4 years old. They have full established families. They're in their 30s and their 40s. They were maybe hustling cannabis because, again, just to make ends meet. And now they're facing deportation. Actually, they can't even come back into the country. What I mean is it how are you? I mean, how, are you guys trying to create awareness about the real scope of when we speak about the immigration and the effects that the war on drugs has on immigrants?
Absolutely. And let me start by saying that it doesn't matter whether it's someone who's at the border or someone who's been here for 10 years to me, because I don't think we treat people like they're disposable, but that's my own, 2 cents to add to the matter. However, you bring up a wonderful point. I think most people do think of that former scenario when they think of deportation. They think about criminals who are here to harm and breaking into the country, and they have no rights to anything because they've never lived here. They're just trying to get here. But that's not most of the population that I saw. Most of the population that I saw were not even undocumented people. I'm talking about people with green cards,
Right,
right?
right, that's right.
Because until you are nationalized, until you go through the whole naturalization process, or unless you were born here, you are still subject to being deported. So
Right,
people who were here legally, right? Could also be subject to deportation proceedings if they violate certain laws, and that can include, that possession, right?
right,
Depending on the situation, the state. And I'm not talking about drug kingpins. I'm not talking about, people trying to give drugs to kids on the
right,
street. I'm
right,
talking about you could be in possession because you personally needed to or wanted to smoke. When you look at it that way, how frightening must that be for someone who has established a life? That maybe they weren't selling it to make ends meet. Maybe they were literally smoking it
right,
because they have Parkinson's and they're aware that it can help them with the tremors, or they have cancer and they're aware that it can help them from dying of waste, not even dying of cancer, dying of starvation because you cannot hold down food.
right,
It could be that. And I'm not saying that's everyone's case either, right? I don't want to paint a picture that is false, but that's a possibility. And it's more than just a remote possibility. It happens all the
right,
time. And
exactly.
when you see that happening, but at the same time, you see places that are so well established with their cannabis. You look at a Colorado, or you look at an Oregon, or you look at a Washington State, a California, and you're like, Wow, how is this happening in the same place at the same time? We're not talking about Canada and the US that have different laws, and these are different countries and different sovereign territories. We're talking about the United States. And that just it's crazy to me. As for who's championing ooh, that cause, there have started to be voices that have come out and spoken to that. But truly, 4 years ago, when I first broached the subject with a former classmate of mine who was very, very well rooted in immigration law, has a very burgeoning practice. He basically looked at me like, "What are you talking about? What are you saying? Why? What is this weed law thing that you're doing?" And that's the other part of it, right? There is so much stigma.
Right,
And that
right,
stigma is across the board. It's not just for attorneys, it's for everybody. There's a lot of stigma associated, but the stigma is compounded in Black communities, right? Because for the most part, most of the people who look like me, who have attained and achieved a successful career in law, it wasn't because they were smoking weed with their friends. And certainly if they were, it wasn't something they were doing openly, right? It was because they stayed away from certain behaviors that were noted as the bad behaviors, right? You have to be the model citizen, the model person in order to achieve certain things in this country when you are heavily melanated. There aren't the same passes, there aren't the same, childhood discretions. As a matter of fact, after 12, in most instances, you're not even treated as a child if you have melanin in your skin. You don't get the luxury of being a young guy at 21,
Boys being
22,
boys.
25. Yeah, yeah, you don't get that. And so I understand that stigma. Our churches teach us that this is something that we should stay away from. Our parents teach us, our teachers teach us, society teaches us that it's if you go down that path, don't expect to have success. And so for me to ask those very same people to essentially jump in the pool with me into something that is quite frankly illegal. I don't care what your state says, the federal government still says that it's illegal. I understand why that's a lot to ask. And I've evolved, right? Initially, I was outraged. What do you mean you don't want to join me in my suicide mission? I was upset that I could not get as many Black attorneys into this space as I wanted. Not enough people realize that this isn't a criminal issue, it's an everyone issue.
Right.
I often think that even if you do not choose to partake in cannabis, it may not be your thing. Not everyone who advocates, by the way, is a consumer. I
That that
became a
that that must
consumer.
be noted as well, please, please. I'm very glad that
Yeah, I mean, I became an advocate not because I consumed cannabis. I became an advocate because I was angry.
right,
And I felt that this is a great moment in history. In law school, we studied these great moments in history, whether it was the civil rights movement or the first when Roe v. Wade happened. You read about these monumental changes in the law that take place, right, as a law student. And I thought to myself, this is one of those. This is one of those times. It has the potential to be a monumental change in the way people are treated, the way um, access is given. There are just so many implications, right? There is a gap not only in wealth in the United States that is predicated on race. There's also a gap in health, right? So
Right.
there's the whole healthcare access, right? There's the fact that people can fight and die for this country, but those veterans who come back with PTSD can't get access to cannabis, even if they tried all of the other opioids.
Right.
And you have to ask yourself, why is it okay to allow these veterans to come home and drink themselves into oblivion, but not okay to give them the relief that they could get from plant medicine, right? That grows naturally. Why? Why are we condemning one as morally
Yes.
corrupt and the other one as just passive, you know, um, as a way to passively spend your time? So again, asking these attorneys to join me is a tall ask. But what I like to do is point out that cannabis isn't, first of all, cannabis law, I always say, is not a thing, right? There's not really a cannabis law because cannabis touches and concerns so many different industries, right? Different areas. It can be whether it's photography, tourism, agriculture, construction, tax, real estate, trademark. There are just so many different areas of practice that you would better serve your clients if you understood their connection to that cannabis infrastructure that's being
Right.
built.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of where I would approach people and say, hey, if you're a tax attorney and you've never heard of 280E because it only applies to cannabis businesses. It's literally a code in the tax code that only applies at this point to people who have cannabis businesses. Quite honestly, it's a punitive tax that exists because cannabis is illegal. But if you've never heard of it and you've never studied it and it's not in your purview because you
Right.
don't deal with cannabis clients, you lose out on that, right? Not only do you lose out on that client because you can't service them, or you're muddling your way through something that you're just learning about on the fly, which endangers your client, or worse yet, you don't even approach that. You've got this client that doesn't know about 280E, and you, the attorney, don't know about 280E, and they come to you and you're handling them like you would any other client. And lo and behold, you've gotten them in hot water and you've gotten yourself in hot water. Those are things that we should try to avoid. We should be knowledgeable about as attorneys.
What
And I,
about
I try.
I just sorry to interject because I saw that you with the Black Cannabis Lawyers Association that you also do training with students and so on. How is that reception? Do you have a lot of do you have I mean is there interest with this with a younger
I love the
citizen?
students. The students are now my favorite people. If I had to do it all over again, I would say forget the old people my age. Let's just deal with students because students get it, right? This is not a conversation. There's no pulling teeth with the students. I don't have to take them through this long diatribe of, in the beginning, there was one God. Like, I don't have to take them to the beginning of earth. They're just like, cannabis, lawyer, down. Like they get it, and it's very easy for them. And we wouldn't have even thought of having students, quite honestly. But one of our partners early on is an organization called the Last Prisoners Project. I love what they do. They help to ensure that people are getting out of prison, right? While everyone's celebrating, woohoo, we have weed. They're making sure, woohoo, we are reuniting families.
Right.
Woohoo, these 30-year exorbitant sentences that should have never been given are now being reviewed given the changes in state law. And the executive director, a woman named Mary Bailey, came to me and asked me if I would mentor a student who was a law student. She asked me if we had any students in our organization. I said no, because at the time it was just attorneys. She asked me if I would mentor her. She said that she had a student who was a young African American woman who was a first year in law school. And when she was 12 years old, her father had been incarcerated for possession of cannabis, and he was still incarcerated. And she decided at 12 years old that she wanted to be an attorney. And that was such a compelling story to me that I said, absolutely, put me in touch with this young lady. And she was amazing. Like hearing her story directly from her mouth, it tugged at my heartstrings. I just thought, wow, her whole career is going to be shaped by what happened to her as a little girl. And it's such a powerful thing. I want to be able to pour into this person. I'm learning, but I want to be able to impart what I'm learning in her, and I want to be able to connect her to others that can support her when she comes out of law school. And so that was the gateway. Once we got this young lady, Rashida Sinclair, once she came to our organization, it opened my eyes to students. I went, students is where it's at. The lawyers will come eventually. They'll figure it out. They'll get over here. Hopefully not too late, but the students are where we want to be. So we immediately added students. We also opened our doors to non-attorneys, right? So even though we started out as lawyers for lawyers, and we still are for lawyers and create resources for lawyers, we said no, this needs to be for advocates, and advocates might be attorneys, they might be non-attorneys, they might be students. We need to broaden this so that we get more people in the door.
So what kind of activities do you guys do? I understand you participate in a lot of expungement clinics, of course, because you are the legal aspect side of things. So what kind of activity does the do you guys do with the association?
To date, we don't have our own expungement clinic, or although we're working on a couple of things there. So we will partner with others that do expungement clinics. Sometimes they'll call on us to try to help them get attorneys to volunteer or get attorneys to assist, and we will do that. We have a couple of initiatives of our own. We will partner with other organizations that are doing good work in the space and try to make sure that this pie is more evenly distributed. We have a new initiative that we launched in January with an organization called ACHEM. And so they are the Association for Cannabis Health Equity in Medicine.
Right.
And that's a phenomenal organization out on the West Coast. I mean, we're both national in scope, but they're heavy on the West Coast. We're heavier on the East Coast.
Okay.
We're kind of going to meet in the middle somewhere, just kind of creating opportunities for learning that are interdisciplinary. So that's an initiative that we were very happy to be asked to be a part of. It is the ACHEM Freedom Initiative, and that's something again that we're proud of because they saw some of the same things we were seeing. So although NABCL is not a law firm, we often will get outreach by people who are so happy to hear that we exist, and they will give us all kinds of very scary things that I won't bore you with right now. But some of them are, you think cannabis law, you don't necessarily think of family law, right? But
Right.
we have parents who will talk about the deprivation of their parental rights
Right on.
in states where cannabis is legal, and that's heart wrenching, right? We have people who will talk to us about the loss of employment opportunities. You don't think about that necessarily, or loss of scholarship, right? So there are all types of unique things that come into play, and people will reach out to us. So for us, having a better sounding board when it came to the science of things was something that we felt we needed. There isn't enough, there isn't testing at this time, or there's limited testing, right? Until we change cannabis from a Schedule One drug to either descheduling, which fingers crossed, or rescheduling. Until that happens, there's very limited research that can be done in the US. And we sort of take the stance that if the research hasn't happened in the US, and it hasn't happened, even though we know, those of us that are knowledgeable realize that that research has been going on across the globe in other places. And this is dates back thousands of years, right? This was first at least documented in China over 5,000 years ago. It's not that there's no knowledge. It's not that there's no scientific evidence that there is medicinal value in the plant. It's that we have decided that if it didn't come from us, then it doesn't exist. So as a result, pairing up with scientists and physicians was a no-brainer for us. By the same token, they understand the science, not necessarily navigating the law. And so they wanted to partner with attorneys to help facilitate the vision of their initiative. And so
Ensure
we
that they
partnered.
remain safe and not get jailed for studying cannabis, basically.
Right,
When it comes
right,
to
that part, that part.
everyone.
So there's that. We have our own initiatives that we have as well. For instance, in April, we will be launching Seat at the Table, which is an initiative that will we'll launch in Washington, D.C. It's actually being hosted at Howard University School of Law, which is my alma mater, I'm very proud to say. And so we'll be bringing policymakers and attorneys and key stakeholders, community leaders together to have a conversation about cannabis, right? Looking at the business and the burdens. of the industry. And, it'll be a fun event as well. Actually, in DC, the event takes place on April 19th. And in DC, during what's known as 420 week, there are all types of activities. There are probably activities all over the country, but in DC, it's done up pretty nice
Right.
because it's our nation's capital. So there is National Cannabis Week. That takes place, so almost every day of the week. There is a different event. We're participating in several of those events, including a lobby day that will take place, I believe, on the 17th. There are a couple of expungement clinics that we'll be a part of, but we're super proud of Seat at the Table because we're really going to bring people together to talk about some of the things that we're seeing, right? There are predatory practices that are taking place. There are people who are still being disenfranchised despite legalization. There are health equity issues that still remain. So we're going to have a little bit of an eye opener for those that may not know what this whole cannabis thing is about. And we're going to invite people not only to join NABCL and join us in this fight to make sure that cannabis legalization in the United States is equitable, inclusive, and reparative. All
Right.
three. We request that all three happen, not just that it's equitable, not just that it's
Yeah.
inclusive, but that it looks to repair and sincerely makes efforts to repair. We don't want this to be like DEI, which we see every day as being dismantled, because there are people who are of the belief that it's unnecessary. The same people who will tell you that slavery was fun
They
will
learn
also
skills.
tell
Come
you
on.
will also tell you that there is no need for equity, right? There is no need for inclusion because we're all on the same playing field. And I often wonder, where do these people live? And if they could walk 24 hours in the shoes of someone on the other side, if they would still think that things were equitable. But I think a film was done about that, and I still don't think it changed the needle much. But
You got to keep
yeah,
pushing,
I mean,
which is where we're at as well. I mean, I would really like to get involved with definitely to cover a lot of what you guys are doing, especially with the day. Is that an all day event?
no, it's actually it's an evening event. So it'll be at 6 o'clock from 6 till
Okay.
10. So it'll, have a little cocktail mixer, a couple of really awesome and impressive speakers,
I saw
kind
that
of
your
a
Cat
panel.
Becker on is your keynote. That's
Yes, what
what
keynote is going to be Kat Packer. We're
speak.
going to be announcing a couple more surprises as to who will be there. But it's really an opportunity to engage folks and less interested in preaching to the choir, right? Those
Right.
that get it are more than welcome to be there. I welcome their support. I welcome the energy that they will bring to the table. But I really want to invite others to the table, those that think this isn't their issue. Because
Right.
something that is unique about cannabis, because it is both medicine and something that people choose to partake in much the same way that they might alcohol or tobacco, without the necessity for the carcinogenic or toxic effects. Of course, I know that cannabis isn't something that everyone should partake in. It isn't a panacea. It doesn't remedy all things. It's not for everybody. But the unique thing about cannabis is there are those who take it because they want to. There are those who take it because they have to. And for the population that has to, that could quite literally be any of us at any moment.
True.
Just because I don't have a diagnosis for
Right.
cancer or
Today,
dementia
you know,
or epilepsy
exactly.
today doesn't mean that that won't be in my life tomorrow or in the life of someone that I love. And sometimes I get frustrated by the very same people who want to lock up the vicious and dangerous weed smokers
Mhm.
for I don't know what reason, because apparently eating a bag of Doritos is a very dangerous thing to do in the United States. Those very same people, when someone in their life that they love has a condition that merits, maybe they've tried everything else. Maybe they can't tolerate opioids. Maybe the opioids are dangerous.
Right.
Maybe they don't want their child to be on an epilepsy medication that causes suicidal ideation, and they want to know what natural remedies exist. Those people didn't know about that diagnosis before it showed up. And it is inherently unfair that those same voices that wanted everyone locked up all of a sudden become the strongest voices of advocacy
Right.
without acknowledging how wrong they were. It isn't that they become advocates because something changes all of us, right? How you feel about this plant today may not be how you feel about it in 5 years, and something will have happened along the way to change your perspective. That's what happened to me. My perspective was changed by hearing other people's stories. However, part of my recompense has to be, wow, I was wrong. 3 words. Don't just tout, we have to make a change. This change has to come now. There are people who are dying. Yeah, that's true. But start with, I was wrong. Because for me, that's where I can reach people. I can reach people who don't get it because I can say I was wrong. I don't have the story of, oh, I've been smoking weed since I was 10 and my dad smoked weed and my mom smoked weed with
Right.
me. Like, I don't have that story at all. My parents wanted nothing to do with weed. It took me 2 years to tell my parents what I was doing. I was embarrassed and ashamed
Right.
that this is what I had done with my legal career. And so I don't have that background of having cannabis be a part of my life that I am just now revealing. It wasn't a part of my life at all, but I was wrong. I was wrong because I was given wrong information, but I was still wrong, right? When I was there touting that this should be arrested. We should stop this. This
Right.
shouldn't happen. It's because I didn't know it was medicine.
Right.
It's because I didn't know it was a drug. It's because I didn't know that when the CSA was created, right, the Controlled Substances
Right.
Act was created, that there was actual evidence that cannabis was neither
Right.
addictive
Oh yeah.
nor
Even
was
the
it
recommend the report, the Nixon's own
the
report. He's
not
like, dude,
only the
people should be
report,
in their home. Come on
multiple
now.
reports. What
And
happened with Nixon, that wasn't the first time. The
right.
Schaefer report wasn't the first time. The LaGuardia report,
Yeah.
it's just the reports were there. The science was there when in 1927, when cannabis was first, or 1937, I apologize.
That's good. That's good. I'll pick right back up. Um, where were you speaking? I guess little.
I was saying, yeah, I was saying that in 1937,
Right.
when the Marijuana Tax Act was first proposed, there was knowledge then. The American Medical Association actually was in opposition to the Tax Act, saying that cannabis was medicine, right? It was actually the most prescribed medicine in the US at one
At the
point.
time, yeah.
At one point in the US, it was required that landowners grow hemp.
Yeah.
So
That
there
was
are a
the
lot
law.
of things
Literally the
that was
law.
the you
Yeah.
had to, right?
Yeah.
And there were times affiliated with war times because of the hemp fibers. Like, we were required to grow it here. We often
I
talk
think
about.
even so much they would tax you if you didn't or something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about cotton as the crop in the US that was grown, and we associate slavery with cotton, but there was a lot of slavery that was associated with the growing of hemp as well. So there's a whole American history, there's a whole global history associated with cannabis, and none of that was taught. We were just taught that this was, a gateway drug. And again, those that instituted that sort of scare tactic knew fully that those things weren't true, right? They were completely knowledgeable that information was false. They even had reports to back it up from medical professionals
Right.
telling them. Scientists were like, no, what you're saying is untrue. And so today it's frightening because most physicians will tell you that they never learned a thing about the endocannabinoid system. And I mean, if you don't know anything about it, good luck spelling it, first of all, if you don't know anything about it. But because but the endocannabinoid system essentially is your body's receptors for what cannabis has to give, right? Your
Right.
body is designed. I don't want to say that your body is designed for cannabis. That sounds a little bit too over the top. But if you break it down, you have an entire system dedicated to receiving
The
what
kind of
cannabis has to give. And we don't know enough about it through our own research in the US. That's part of why we need to be able to research this plant
right.
more, not just for the benefits, to also stay away from the harms, because I won't say that there is emphatically no harm that can come from the use of cannabis. I don't want to talk in extremes because there's always going to be the one person who says, you know, I broke out into hives.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but but peanuts are not banned, and there are entire people who will die if they're in the same room with a peanut butter sandwich. So
No, it's
I
true. Yeah.
mean, it's true. I don't mean to trivialize it, but there are always people for whom something does not work perfectly. Nothing is going to be perfect for everyone, but to categorically deny our ability to find out more about this plant and how it can help people um, is again, it's criminal. It's criminal. There's
Absolutely.
just too much value in that. And when you look at who stands to gain from cannabis not being legalized, it's players that it's alcohol, right? Why would they want the competition of cannabis? I can't grow gin, you know? I can't
Potatoes.
grow beer.
The whole
I
process.
can't
Yeah.
grow vodka. So, of course, that's a threat. And if I'm a business, I'm looking at that other business as a threat. The same
Right.
can be said for pharmaceutical companies,
Pharmaceutical
right? Yeah,
production. Right. Yeah.
for pharmaceutical companies can benefit from the plant, but for them, they've got to make sure that they can control who can grow it, right? Because I can't
That's where the
grow my
rescheduling comes in. You kind of
right.
brought that up before. I definitely had to have get your word on that because what fine it does look like there will be a level of rescheduling. I know that a lot of people want descheduling. Explain a little bit what's the difference and why does it matter?
Oh, that matters a lot, right? Because it matters for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of talk now. The current administration, when Biden ran the first time, he talked about decriminalizing cannabis, right? And even at the State of the Union that just occurred, we heard both President Biden and a few days later, we heard Vice President Harris talk about the fact that no one should be in prison for a plant. Right. And I think most of us can agree with that. I think that the current statistic says that over 70% of Americans agree with that sentiment.
Exactly.
And yet there's a lot of confusion, right? Because people are under the false belief that Biden's pardon in 2022 somehow created legalization federally. It did not. Decriminalization in and of itself also does not create legality, right? Decriminalization is more in terms of I live in North Carolina. We have neither adult use nor medicinal cannabis.
Right. Okay.
I probably can't go out of my house and drive down the road without smoking, without smelling
Like right.
cannabis everywhere.
Okay. Fair enough. Right.
That's because, in part, because of decriminalization, right? Officers, for the most part, in a lot of places, are looking the other way. They're not prosecuting or they're not pursuing you because they smell it, right? That's sort of what decriminalization looks like. We're not going to go after you,
Right.
right? But that's not legalization, right? So you can still be arrested. You can still go to jail. Those laws still exist on the books. So whatever the laws were last week, they're still on the books, even though I smell it everywhere. That's what decriminalization looks like. What rescheduling looks like is right now, cannabis is on the Controlled Substances Act. There are 5 different tiers of drugs, and cannabis is at the strictest, right? It's right there next to heroin. Makes no sense
Right.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
I've never heard of anyone taking heroin for a toothache, but whatever. So cannabis right now is
I'm
listed.
sure there was some. Look,
Right.
look, I'm gonna take a shot. I mean, if I have to say
Right.
for sure. Yeah.
Right. So it's listed next to heroin, which means it has zero medicinal value and it has a high propensity for addiction.
Right.
Does anyone spot something wrong with that categorization?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because neither of those things is true.
Right.
And we know that neither of those things is true. So why some wonder why is there even a debate? Moving it to Schedule 3, which is what has been proposed by the Department of Health and Human Services, still doesn't mean that it's legal, right? There are a lot of things that are in a Schedule 3 right now. And all of those things require a doctor's prescription, which
That's
means it opens up some testing or some
research.
research, I should
Right.
say.
Right.
It does allow doctors to be able to prescribe the medication more widely. It would be allowed on a federal level, right? Some people are confused because, well, my state does that already. Your
Legal.
state does it, but it is still federally illegal for them to do it. And so it makes that change and it offers some relief to businesses, right?
Right.
I spoke earlier about 280E, a
ADE. Right.
section of the tax code. And I said that that was a punitive. section of the tax code, because essentially it's much like the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. You're being penalized for doing something illegal.
Right.
And by the way, even though we have identified it as illegal, we would like to get
Tax,
paid
right.
for your illegal activity.
We want
I won't even talk about how sick that is, right? We agree that it is illegal, but we want a kickback. That's what 280 is. It's the government's kickback
right,
for turning the other way and letting you do something that it said is illegal.
right,
As a parent, I would never do that. I would never say, don't eat from the cookie jar, but if you do, grab me two cookies. Like, that's
right.
not how parents work.
Gotta
Not
hook
that
me
the
up too,
government is
right?
our parent, but it's a little bit
Excuse me.
strange that that's what we've decided to do.
Right,
So it makes 280E go away, right? Or some argue that it makes 280E go away because now the federal government is allowing this. Doesn't mean they won't replace it with a different
something
tax,
else, right,
but 280E is pretty wretched. And I keep referring to it as a tax. What I should actually clarify is not that it's a tax, it's just that, you know, as a business, I can write off my
right,
utilities, my payroll, my supplies. I can write off a lot of things as a business. Um, if your business is a cannabis business, you cannot write off any of those things
right,
on your federal taxes at all because you are doing something illegal. It's the reason you can't just walk into Bank of America or Wells Fargo and open your account for Weeds Are Us is because you are doing something illegal and they can't really help you in your illegal endeavors, right? They are federally insured and they want no parts of your illegal activity. So it does those things. Nothing that I mentioned releases people from prison.
right,
Nothing that I mentioned reunifies family members that have been deported. Nothing that I've mentioned makes sure that you don't lose your scholarship that you earned.
right,
Nothing that I mentioned says that you get to keep that job that you earned.
right.
Nothing about what I said says that your kids won't be taken away from you. So you see the problem there. Like that only solves
It's teeth of the
some
problem,
of the
right,
problems
right,
that people who are in this space from a capitalistic perspective are suffering under. But where's the decriminalization in that? Where is the repair in that?
right,
There are communities that were decimated by the war on drugs. And I don't like to reduce everything to race, but those communities are filled with people who look like me.
right.
Those communities were ravaged by the war on drugs. And we're not even going to say sorry and try to fix it. We're just going to have a lottery system where it's basically the Hunger Games. You've got an entire community that was ravaged fighting over five licenses that they have to pay
Absolutely.
hundreds of thousands of dollars to get. That's
And
what we're
then to
calling
maintain
repair.
and your build out and all that cost associated
Yeah,
after the
yeah,
fact, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Right. That's the repair that we're offering. Hey, you get to fight over these five licenses. Good luck. And by the way, after your company collapses, some big MSO is going to come and scoop it up for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
There's your repair. That's not acceptable. I think we need to have real repair. We have to be intentional. I say that we need to be as intentional about the repair as we were about the destruction.
That's that's a brilliant way to actually close. Actually, as mindful of the repair as we were about the actual destruction. No, absolutely. That's so. What I mean, what what level? Okay, I mean that's I'm gonna just last question. Because that does sound like a relatively large statement. What would that take? What can be done? Say, all right, fine. We know that Biden wants to reschedule. Now that seems to be his objective, and I guess be responsible. Well, get the states to to do pardons this one, which I also understand. Pardons doesn't mean that your records are expunged, so you still kind of suffer the issues with the denial of access. So what I mean, as as quickly as you can, or as just limited in whatever as you can, bullet points. Now, what needs to be addressed and what needs to be done in order to rectify these ills and create a proper, equitable, happy cannabis industry.
Well, we can't, this may be an unpopular sentiment, but we can't simply deschedule with no plan. Like that's probably the scariest scenario because I'll tell you right now, tobacco, pharma, alcohol, and probably Amazon will scoop in and take everything.
You kidding?
Probably. No,
No,
seriously,
no,
that's what will
I'm pretty
happen.
sure they're up in there.
The whole notion of mom and pops or legacy growers, that goes away if we deschedule without an actual plan.
Okay, right.
Um, because there's no safety net there. And that just becomes who has the most money. And it's
Right.
not, it's not Tyler and Ray Ray who got together because they used to grow in high school. It's not them. That's not who has the most money, the most business acumen, the most support, the most lobbies. That's not them. It's going to be the people who have the most political power, the most clout, the most money, right? So that eliminates everyone else. Everyone will be buying their weed from Elon Musk. That's what will happen, right? And on the moon or
I was
something.
about
I
to
don't
say
know.
from the moon. He grew
I
up,
don't know.
boom,
And
right?
that's not what people have fought for, have been imprisoned for, have died for, have been separated for either.
Absolutely.
So there needs to be strategy there. You said quickly, I don't have all the answers, right? But I do know that we have to start with rooms that are filled with people who have a vested interest, not just a financial interest, but
Right.
you need to listen to people who are from the communities that were hardest hit. We need to stop treating the notion of social equity as charity, because
Right.
that angers me as well. It isn't charity if I've paid for it in advance,
Right.
right? If I pay for my hotel room before I get there, and then instead of handing me the keys, they give me this sermon about how they're doing me a favor, I'm looking at them like they're crazy. I already paid you. What are you talking about? You took that money out of my credit card 2 weeks ago when I made
Right.
the reservation. So how dare you treat me like you're giving me a free room when I show up? You're not. Okay. So much the same way, people who have paid with their lives, with their livelihoods, have already paid for the privilege
Right.
that many others are enjoying right now. So recognize that and stop treating equity as charity. Okay. Um, I think we also have to have educated people leading the charge. We cannot keep having regulators that are just in their position because they were somebody's uncle or somebody's
Right. Right.
brother-in-law
Yeah. Yeah.
or somebody's cousin. Some tobacco guy had enough money to get his brother into the role of a regulator.
Regulator.
That's not the way for this to be a fair system or a system that's actually robust and benefits the people. If we want to benefit the people, we should have well educated. There should be a requirement that you go through the like you have to understand where we came from. I know that history is apparently a dirty word in our nation. We're trying to expunge it and kind of squash that out. We
It
won't
depends on
expunge
whose history
records,
we're
but
talking about, because some you all
oh yeah.
gravy.
Right.
Hey,
Right. Slavery was fun. I know. I must have missed that chapter.
we
But,
killed.
if you need to have regulators, you need to have people who are making decisions about rollouts of cannabis. They need to know something before they get there, not just know someone, but know something. And part of that something should be the ill effects of the war on drugs, right? You can't just build on top of something, call it DEI and keep it moving and say, oh, we
Right.
have equity, because that's not how it works. I think if we start there and if we look at this and say that it should be led by science, supported by law, not led by politics, supported by money,
Right.
then we're probably in a much better place.
Right on. All right. And well, so what you're saying, in fact, this is kind of why we're trying to do we're doing the legacy project, is to really change this conversation from this charitable viewpoint to that this is kind of just for societal good, really and truly. How do we I mean, beyond the media, whatever, how can we get that to be an influence in the policies as they're rolled out, beyond just me trying to, get this documentary out there type of thing.
I go back to the young people. Young people are amazing to me. Like, they're wild and they do weird things, and I don't get all the stuff that they do. I happen to be the mother of 5 young people, and sometimes I'm baffled by the stuff that they do. But something that they're excellent at is that communication, getting the word out, and
Okay.
they are desirous of the truth.
Right.
I tend to find that when you share the truth with them, not only do they become impassioned about that truth, they become impassioned about spreading that truth.
Okay.
I think any campaign that's looking to educate the people and do it quickly should start with the youth, because put that knowledge in their hands, put the history of prohibition into their hands, and watch what happens.
Right.
They will be relentless in their efforts to make sure everyone knows about it. And they will also be relentless in their efforts to make sure we change something. Um, I think that's the smartest play. Start with them, plant those seeds in them, and it'll take us all a long way. Those older folks won't like it. They won't like what the younger people are doing. They'll be resistant to it. But you know what? We're on our way out anyway. Like, let's leave them an earth and a
Yeah,
planet and a world and a country that's so much better than
yeah,
what we did with it. Um, I think that that's needs to be part of the plan. So when you're setting your table, your very diverse table, make sure you have people with different abilities, people of different races, people of different socioeconomic statues, people of different ages. Have that room reflect who we are, right? We
yeah.
say we're the greatest nation in the world, right? We love telling people we're the
Oh
greatest
yeah.
nation in the world. Let's actually be the greatest nation. Let's actually utilize what I view as our greatest but most underutilized superpower, our diversity. We
Right.
have it. There are places that don't have diversity the way we do. We have it and we don't use it.
Well, I mean, that's largely because there are those voices who have a different vision of what this wonderful greatest nation on earth is supposed to look like, and I think that's a conflict that America is facing once again right now. But nonetheless, on that, which is kind of sounding kind of negative, you kind of ended on a pretty positive note. So effectively, the future is bright. You do see that things will move in the right direction. Our generation is we are where we are. You have those who are with us who are not. Again, it's a large part in the educational process, but you do see that the future it should be bright for the industry. Am I reading you correctly?
It should be. It should be, but I want to caution one last thing. And I don't know how positive this is, but it is an urgent call, right? In the United States right now, we're looking at an election year.
Yeah.
That's a whole can of worms that we don't have time to really dissect right now, but it's an election year, which means who we put into
Right.
positions is going to affect what this looks like moving forward. So I cannot emphasize enough to be to go beyond the soundbite. Go beyond that 5 minute clip that whoever is saying, I believe in cannabis or down with the plant. Find out who these people really are, how they really feel, who they're really connected to.
Right.
We will do all of our best efforts to make sure that we reveal those that are saying one thing and doing something
I was
else.
gonna say just find out who's
Be
paying them, and
aware of
that's
that.
when you figure it out.
Yeah, be aware of that because you don't want to put people in office that claim to be part of one party, but
Right,
are really part of this sub party that exists in America,
right,
and that they continue to chip away at all of the advances that have been made. So that's another key part of this. Absolutely be involved. Like, it's important for a lot of reasons, not just for cannabis, but this could irreparably damage cannabis if we don't do this election year right.
right. Yeah. Right on, and that's a great way to end. I will say, yeah, there's this Democratic politician, I can't remember his name, thank goodness, who just seems to be like, it's like you're in the wrong party. But anyways, right, we have to be careful about who we elect. No, you're right, and I think that a lot of people do focus on the presidential elections, that they look at the very high level ticket, but it's also the people at the state level, the legislature level, that
Oh, that's it's more so the people at the
they're
state
actually
level.
more important. Yeah.
Absolutely. The presidential, there are powers there. I would be insane to say that there aren't, but it's who you elect at the local level. Who
Right.
are your judges? Who's getting in as your mayor? I mean, you've really got to look at local level politics because those are the people who can and do the most damage sometimes.
Right, right on. All right. Well, on that, I will say thank you very much. Natacha Andrews Esquire. I'm just reading down your title below there. Thank you ever so much once again for joining me. This was great. It's a great conversation. We could have continued to go on, but we'll pick it. In fact, we have the Legacy Project when you meet in DC. I will pick up the conversation there. All right. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Okay. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.
You too.